On that day, the world stood still. The skies darkened, the earth trembled, and the impossible became reality. A moment that shook not only Jerusalem, but the course of human history. What if I told you that at the exact moment Jesus took his last breath, a series of supernatural events unfolded, leaving even the most skeptical witnesses in awe? Coincidence or divine intervention? Today, we are going to uncover the 7 shocking events that happened instantly after the death of Jesus. And by the end of this video, your understanding of that day will never be the same. The year was approximately 33 AD. Jerusalem was filled with people celebrating the Passover, a sacred Jewish festival. Thousands gathered in the city, unaware that this day would be marked by something beyond their understanding. Outside the city walls, on a hill called Golgotha, a man hung on a Roman cross. He was no ordinary man. For 3 years, he had healed the sick, raised the dead, and preached about a kingdom not of this world. Some loved him, others hated him. But one thing was undeniable. He had changed everything. His name was Jesus of Nazareth. Surrounded by Roman soldiers, religious leaders, and a crowd of onlookers, Jesus endured unimaginable suffering. The nails had pierced his hands and feet. A crown of thorns had been placed on his head, and for 6 agonizing hours he hung between heaven and earth. Then, at exactly 3 p.m., something happened. His final words echoed through the air. "It is finished." At that moment, the world changed forever. As soon as Jesus breathed his last breath, the first supernatural event took place. The great veil of the temple was torn in 2. The temple in Jerusalem was the most sacred place on earth for the Jewish people. Inside, there was a massive curtain, about 60 feet high and 4 inches thick, that separated the holy place from the Holy of Holies, where God's presence was believed to dwell. No one could enter except the high priest, and only once a year. But when Jesus died, something impossible happened. That enormous veil was torn from top to bottom, not by human hands, but by God himself. What did this mean? That the separation between God and humanity was over. The ultimate sacrifice had been made. From that moment on, people no longer needed a high priest to access God. The way was open forever. But that was just the beginning. Almost immediately after, the second supernatural event took place. A massive earthquake shook the land. The ground trembled, buildings cracked, and the very foundation of Jerusalem seemed to collapse. Even the Roman soldiers, trained for battle and unshaken by violence, were terrified. They had witnessed countless crucifixions before, but never had they seen something like this. The earthquake was so strong that even the rocks split apart. The earth itself was responding to what had just happened on the cross. As the ground shook, something even more terrifying unfolded. The third supernatural event. The sky turned completely dark, but this wasn't just an ordinary storm or a solar eclipse. Historical records suggest that the darkness lasted for 3 hours, from noon until 3 p.m. The entire land was covered in shadows, as if the world itself was mourning. Even far from Jerusalem, in other regions of the Roman Empire, people recorded an unusual darkness that could not be explained. Many began to wonder, was this truly the Son of God? Then something even more unbelievable occurred. The 4th supernatural event. Tombs were opened, and the dead came back to life. According to the Gospel of Matthew, many holy people who had died were resurrected. They left their tombs and walked into the city, appearing to many. Can you imagine the shock of seeing someone you knew was dead standing before you? These weren't ghosts or spirits. These were real people, fully alive again. The 5th supernatural event was the panic that spread throughout Jerusalem. Witnesses ran through the streets, desperate to understand what was happening. The religious leaders who had orchestrated Jesus' crucifixion suddenly realized they had made a terrible mistake. many began to question, had they just killed the Messiah? Some of them rushed to the temple, only to find that the veil had already been torn. Others ran in fear as the aftershocks of the earthquake continued. But perhaps the most dramatic change happened within the heart of a Roman centurion. This leads us to the sixth supernatural event. One of the commanders responsible for executing Jesus stood at the foot of the cross, witnessing everything. He had seen hundreds of men die before, but this was different. As he watched Jesus take his final breath, saw the sky darken, felt the earth shake, and heard the rumors of the dead rising, he was overcome with fear. Then, in a moment of realization, he uttered words that shocked everyone around him. Truly, this man was the Son of God. A hardened Roman soldier, trained to kill, loyal to Caesar, had just confessed faith in Christ. The final seventh supernatural event was something that had been prophesied for centuries. Everything that had just happened was written long before Jesus was even born. The prophet Isaiah spoke of a suffering servant who would be pierced for our transgressions. The Psalms described a righteous man who would be mocked, abandoned, and have his hands and feet pierced. The prophet Zechariah said, "They will look on the one they have pierced and mourn for him." These weren't random occurrences. Every single event that took place that day had already been foretold in the scriptures. And so, as the dust settled, as the people processed what had just happened, one thing became clear. This was no ordinary death. This was a divine intervention, a turning point in history, the moment that changed everything. The Son of God had given his life. And in doing so, he had opened the door for all of humanity to be reconciled with God. But this isn't just an ancient story. This is a reality that still echoes today. What happened on that cross affects you and me. The question is, what will you do with this truth? Will you ignore it, or will you let it change your life? If this story has impacted you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. The world needs to know what happened on the day the world stood still. If this video moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button to help spread this powerful message. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more incredible content like this. And let me know in the comments which of these 7 events impacted you the most. Also, share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. You never know whose life might be changed by this message. Let's keep this truth alive and bring more people into this incredible journey. See you in the next video.